The silver ships appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system on a Tuesday morning. Captain Sarah Mitchell was drinking her second cup of coffee aboard the orbital defense station when the sensors picked them up. At first, she thought it was another merchant convoy from the outer colonies. Then she saw the size readings. "Ma'am, you need to see this," said Lieutenant Torres from his console. His voice carried a tension that made Sarah's stomach drop. She walked over and looked at the display. Her coffee cup slipped from her fingers and shattered on the deck. 27 massive ships hung in space beyond Pluto's orbit. Each one was bigger than anything humanity had ever built. The largest vessel stretched nearly 10 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull gleaming like polished metal under the distant sun. Strange symbols covered its surface and weapon ports dotted its sides like the eyes of some ancient beast. Sarah hit the emergency alert button. Throughout the solar system, klaxons began to wail. On Earth, Mars, and the Moon, military commanders rushed to their posts. This was what humanity had been preparing for since they first looked up at the stars and wondered what else might be out there. The alien fleet moved with purpose, not the random drift of exploration. They knew exactly where they were going. Their formation was perfect, disciplined, like they had done this many times before. Sarah watched the tactical display as the ships arranged themselves in a pattern that could only mean one thing: invasion formation. Admiral Zhang's face appeared on Sarah's communication screen. His usually calm expression was tight with worry. "Captain Mitchell, what's our status?" he asked. 27 ships, sir. Unknown technology. They're moving into standard attack formation," Sarah reported. "Estimated time to Earth orbit is 18 hours at current speed. Any attempt at communication?" "None, sir. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies, but it's not directed at us. Looks like they're talking to each other." Admiral Zhang nodded, grimly. "Activate Protocol 7. All stations to combat readiness. And Sarah, make sure our guests know they're being watched." Sarah smiled despite the fear in her chest. "Already on it, sir." Across the solar system, humanity's true strength began to reveal itself. What looked like simple mining stations suddenly bristled with weapons. Asteroid bases that had been disguised as research facilities opened their hidden bays. Ships that had been hiding in the shadow of moons powered up their engines and moved into position. The aliens had no idea they were being watched by 1,000 eyes. Commander Krextal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Glory. His forearms were crossed behind his back as he studied the primitive world ahead. Earth looked so small, so helpless. Blue and white and green spinning peacefully in the void like a child's toy. "Any resistance detected?" he asked his weapons officer. "Minimal, Commander. A few orbital stations, some small patrol craft. Nothing that could threaten even one of our escort ships," the officer replied. His voice carried the confidence of someone who had conquered dozens of worlds. Krextal's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. This would be another easy victory for the Zephyrian Empire. The local species, humans, according to their intercepted communications, barely had faster-than-light travel. Their weapons were primitive, their ships tiny. They were perfect candidates for integration into the Empire as a worker species. "Begin standard first contact protocol," Krextal ordered. "Give them the usual terms." His communications officer, a young Zephyrian eager to prove himself, activated the broadcasting array. The message would reach every human receiver in the system within minutes. It was the same message the Empire had sent to 1,000 worlds before Earth. On her station, Sarah listened to the transmission with growing anger. The alien voice spoke perfect English, which meant they had been studying humanity for some time. The words were polite, even friendly, but the meaning underneath was clear as starlight. "People of Earth," the voice said, "we are the Zephyrian Galactic Empire. We have come to welcome you into our great civilization. Your world has been selected for integration into our benevolent rule. You will find that life under the Empire is peaceful and productive. Your people will be relocated to suitable worlds where they can serve the greater good. Your planet's resources will be harvested efficiently for the benefit of all Imperial citizens. Resistance is futile and unnecessary. You have 72 hours to prepare for the arrival of our integration fleet. Do not attempt to flee or fight. Such actions will only bring suffering to your species. Welcome to the Empire. The transmission ended. Silence filled the command center for a long moment. Then Sarah started laughing. It wasn't a happy laugh. 72 hours, she said to Lieutenant Torres. They're giving us 72 hours to surrender our entire civilization? Ma'am, incoming priority message from Earth Command, Torres reported. President Chen's face appeared on the main screen. She was a small woman with silver hair and steel in her eyes. Behind her, Sarah could see the flags of every nation on Earth. This wasn't just China's leader speaking. This was humanity's voice. Citizens of Earth and all our colonies, President Chen began. We have received the alien ultimatum. After consultation with the Global Defense Council, the Colonial Senate, and the Military High Command, our response is unanimous. She paused and looked directly into the camera. We reject their terms completely. Earth bows to no empire. Humanity kneels to no alien power. Our answer is no. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. This was it. This was the moment humanity had been preparing for since the first nuclear weapon was built, since the first spaceship left Earth's atmosphere, since the first colony was established on Mars. Every military exercise, every defensive strategy, every hidden base and secret weapon, it had all been leading to this moment. Commander Krextal received the human response with mild interest. Defiance was common among primitive species. They always thought they could fight the Empire. They never understood how outmatched they were until the orbital bombardment began. Amusing, he said to his bridge crew. They think they can resist us. How refreshing. It has been some time since we encountered a species with spirit. His tactical officer looked up from his console with confusion on his alien features. Commander, I'm detecting some unusual energy readings from their orbital installations. Krextal waved a dismissive arm. Primitive reactors powering up, no doubt. They're probably trying to run away. Set an intercept course for any ships that attempt to flee the system. Sir, these readings are significant. Much higher than expected for their technology level. Impossible. Our survey teams have been watching them for months. They barely have fusion power. They couldn't possibly. Krextal stopped talking as his displays suddenly lit up with new contacts. Ships were appearing throughout the human system. Not the tiny patrol craft they had detected earlier, but warships, dozens of them, then hundreds. Each one was smaller than a Zephyrian cruiser, but they moved with purpose and precision that spoke of serious military training. Where did they come from? Krextal demanded. Unknown, sir. They seem to have been hiding behind planets and moons. Some appear to have been disguised as asteroids or debris. More concerning were the space stations. What had looked like simple orbital platforms were reconfiguring themselves, unfolding like metal flowers to reveal massive weapon arrays. The energy signatures were off the charts for a supposedly primitive civilization. Analysis of their weapons? Krextal asked, trying to keep the worry out of his voice. Unclear, Commander. The technology doesn't match our databases. They seem to favor kinetic weapons and some kind of guided projectiles. Very primitive approach, but the power levels are substantial. Krextal stared at the tactical display. Something was wrong here. Very wrong. The Empire's intelligence had been flawed, or the humans had been hiding their true capabilities. Either way, this was no longer looking like a simple conquest. Signal. The fleet, he ordered. Combat formation. Full shields and weapons hot. These primitives want to play war? We'll show them what real power looks like. On Earth, in a bunker buried 2 miles beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Rodriguez watched the alien fleet's response with grim satisfaction. The Zephyrians were reacting exactly as the war games had predicted. Overconfident, slow to adapt, still thinking in terms of the overwhelming force that had worked on other species. They had no idea what humanity had learned from its own bloody history. All stations report ready, General, his aide reported. Shall we proceed to Phase 2? Rodriguez nodded. Send the signal. Let's see how they handle a real surprise. Throughout the solar system, hidden installations that had been built over decades of secret preparation, came online. The humans had learned from their own wars that the best defense was one your enemy never saw coming. Every asteroid that could be hollowed out had been converted into a weapons platform. Every seemingly civilian installation had hidden military capabilities. The aliens had expected to face the defenses of one small planet. Instead, they found themselves looking at the combined military might of an entire solar system that had been turned into a fortress. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. "Commander," the Zephyrian tactical officer called out, his voice tight with alarm. "I'm detecting massive energy buildup from the planet's moon." Krextal looked at the display and felt his blood turn cold. The human's moon was lighting up like a star. Power readings were climbing beyond anything in Imperial records. Whatever they had built there, it was bigger than anything the Empire had ever encountered. "All ships, emergency maneuvers," he shouted. "Get us away from that moon." But it was too late. The humans had been planning this moment for over a century. They had studied every alien encounter, every science fiction story, every military strategy in their history. They had prepared for the day when someone would come to take their freedom away. Today was that day, and humanity was ready. The moon's surface split open like an egg, revealing a cannon the size of a city. Energy crackled along its length as capacitors that had been charging for months reached full power. The barrel turned slowly, like the eye of a giant awakening from sleep, and pointed directly at the center of the alien fleet. President Chen's voice echoed across every human communication channel in the system. "This is Earth's final warning to the Zephyrian fleet. You have entered Terran space without permission. You have threatened our people and our freedom. You have 60 seconds to begin withdrawal from our system, or we will consider your presence an act of war." Commander Krextal stared at the impossible weapon pointed at his fleet. His ship's computers were screaming warnings about energy levels that shouldn't exist, about weapons that defied everything the Empire knew about primitive civilizations. For the first time in his long military career, Krextal felt genuine fear. The countdown began. Commander Krextal stood frozen on his bridge as the countdown reached 30 seconds. The massive weapon on Earth's moon tracked his flagship with mechanical precision. Around him, his crew worked frantically at their stations, trying to find some weakness in the human defenses. "Commander," his weapons officer called out. "The primitive kinetic weapons, they're not primitive at all. These readings show acceleration rates that would tear apart our hulls." "Shields to maximum," Krextal ordered. "All weapons target that moon cannon." "Sir, our plasma batteries can't reach that distance with any accuracy, and their orbital platforms are jamming our targeting systems." Krextal's mandibles clicked in frustration. This was impossible. The Empire had conquered over 10,000 worlds. They had never encountered resistance like this from a species that barely knew how to leave their home system. The intelligence reports had to be wrong. 10 seconds. "Signal withdrawal," he finally shouted. "All ships, emergency retreat to hyperspace jump point." But as the Zephyrian fleet began to turn, President Chen's voice cut across all frequencies. Again, her words were calm, measured, and absolutely terrifying in their certainty. "Too late," she said simply. The moon cannon fired. A beam of pure energy, brighter than Earth's sun, lanced across space. It passed just over the alien flagship's hull, close enough to overload their shields and fry half their electronics. The beam continued on for millions of kilometers before finally dispersing, but its message was crystal clear. That had been a warning shot. The next one wouldn't miss. "Impressive," President Chen continued, her voice now broadcasting on every frequency the aliens used. "Your shields held better than expected. Our calculations suggested complete hull breach from that range." Krextal felt his heart skip a beat. A warning shot? That impossible weapon had been turned down? "This is President Chen of the United Earth Federation," the human leader continued. "I'm speaking not just to your fleet, but to every Zephyrian listening across your empire. Your forces have exactly one chance to leave our space peacefully. After that, we consider your presence an act of war." "Unknown vessel," Krextal transmitted back, trying to regain some dignity. "I am Commander Krextal of the Eternal Glory, representative of the Zephyrian Galactic Empire. You will surrender your world immediately or face the consequences. We offer you membership in the greatest civilization in the galaxy. Refuse and you will be destroyed. There was a pause, then impossibly the human started laughing. Commander Krextal, President Chen replied, "Let me explain something to you. 300 years ago, my ancestors faced men who thought they could conquer the world through superior technology and overwhelming force. Those men learned a hard lesson about underestimating human determination. Today, you're going to learn the same lesson." On the bridge of the Eternal Glory, Krextal's tactical officer looked up with alarm. "Commander, I'm detecting new signatures throughout the system. The humans have been hiding ships everywhere. Current count is over 800 vessels and the number keeps climbing." 800? Krextal whispered. That was impossible. The Empire's intelligence showed maybe 50 human ships in their entire civilization. Sir, some of these energy signatures are massive. These aren't patrol boats. Some of these ships are larger than our heavy cruisers. President Chen's transmission continued, and now her voice carried steel. For the benefit of anyone listening across the galaxy, let me make Earth's position clear. This system and all space within 500 light-years of Sol is now declared sovereign Terran territory. Any Zephyrian vessel found within our borders will be destroyed without warning. Any attempt to establish bases, colonies, or military installations within Terran space will be met with immediate retaliation. The declaration sent shockwaves across the bridge. Krextal could hardly believe what he was hearing. This primitive world was claiming an area of space larger than most Imperial sectors. The audacity was breathtaking. Furthermore, Chen continued, any species currently under Zephyrian occupation that requests asylum will be granted safe passage to Terran space. We offer protection to all who seek freedom from Imperial rule. Now Krextal felt real panic. This wasn't just defiance. This was open rebellion that could spread throughout the Empire. If other species heard this message and believed these humans could actually protect them. Impossible bluff, he muttered. But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't. The moon cannon alone proved these humans had technology the Empire didn't understand, and now ships were decloaking throughout the system, revealing the true size of humanity's hidden fleet. On Earth, in the underground command center, General Rodriguez monitored the alien fleet's response. The Zephyrians were clearly shaken, but they hadn't retreated yet. Typical Imperial behavior. Too proud to back down even when faced with superior force. "General, we're receiving communications from the outer colonies," his aide reported. "All defense grids are online and ready. The aliens have no idea how many systems we actually control." Rodriguez nodded. The secret colonization program had been humanity's greatest achievement. While the Zephyrians thought humans barely controlled their home system, the truth was very different. Humanity had been quietly spreading across local space for over a century, establishing hidden colonies and military bases throughout dozens of star systems. Every lesson learned from Earth's own history of empire and resistance had been applied, on a galactic scale. Never again would humanity be caught unprepared by a superior enemy. "Signal all stations," Rodriguez ordered. "Begin Phase 3. Let's show our guests what real human engineering looks like." Throughout the solar system, structures that had been hidden for decades began to reveal themselves. Asteroid mining facilities dropped their camouflage to show massive weapons platforms. Research stations on the outer planets unfolded into military installations. Even the space elevators on Earth and Mars bristled with defensive systems. But the most shocking revelation came when Jupiter's largest moon suddenly lit up with energy signatures. Ganymede, Europa, Io, and Callisto all had been secretly converted into fortress worlds over the past 50 years. Each moon contained enough firepower to destroy an Imperial battle fleet. Commander Krextal watched his tactical display fill with hostile contacts and felt his worldview crumbling. The Empire's standard procedure was to overwhelm primitive species with superior numbers and technology. But these humans had been preparing for this moment since before his grandfather was hatched. "Commander," his communications officer called out urgently, "we're receiving transmissions from across the Empire. Other species are hearing the human broadcast. Some are asking questions about their own status under Imperial rule." This was Krextal's worst nightmare. The Empire's power rested on the belief that resistance was hopeless. If these humans proved that Imperial fleets could be defeated, rebellions would spread like fire across the galaxy. "All ships, prepare for combat," he ordered. "We cannot allow this defiance to stand. If we withdraw now, the Empire will face revolts on 1,000 worlds." His bridge crew looked at him with worry, but began preparing for battle. They were loyal Zephyrians, and they would follow orders even into certain death. President Chen's voice cut across their preparations. "Commander Krextal, our sensors show your ships powering weapons. This is your final warning. Withdraw now, or face the consequences." "Never," Krextal transmitted back. "The Empire does not retreat from primitives. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. Your little planet will be just another addition to our glory." The response came immediately, and it wasn't from President Chen. Instead, Admiral Zhang's calm voice filled the communication channels. "Very well, Commander. You have chosen your path. All human vessels, this is Admiral Zhang. The alien fleet has been declared hostile. Rules of engagement are now active. Weapons free. Repeat, weapons free." Across the solar system, humanity's hidden fleet came fully online. Ships that had been disguised as cargo vessels revealed their true nature as heavy cruisers. Asteroid bases opened fire with weapons that accelerated projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. The orbital platforms around Earth lit up like deadly flowers, their energy weapons reaching across millions of kilometers to bracket the alien fleet. But the humans weren't just relying on superior firepower. They had studied every battle in their own history, learning from victories and defeats alike. They knew that winning a war wasn't just about having better weapons. It was about using them more cleverly than your enemy. The human fleet moved with coordination that stunned the Zephyrians. Every ship knew exactly where every other ship was positioned. Their communications were instantaneous, their tactics fluid and adaptable. They fought like a single organism with 1,000 eyes and 1,000 hands. The Zephyrians, for all their technological superiority, fought like they always had, with overwhelming force and predictable tactics. They had never needed to innovate because they had never faced real resistance. Today, that changed everything. Commander Krextal watched in horror as the first exchange of fire went badly for his fleet. Human projectiles punched through Zephyrian shields like they weren't there, while Imperial energy weapons seemed to have trouble targeting the smaller, faster human ships. "How are they moving like that?" his tactical officer shouted over the noise of battle. "Their coordination is impossible." Krextal had no answer. The humans fought with a unity of purpose that the Empire had never encountered. Every ship, every platform, every weapon seemed to know exactly what every other part of their military was doing. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. And it was going to destroy his fleet. "Signal the Empire," he ordered grimly. Tell them the humans are not what they appear to be. Tell them we need reinforcements. Many reinforcements." But even as he gave the order, Krextal knew it might be too late. The humans had revealed their hand, and it was stronger than anyone had imagined. The war for humanity's freedom had begun. The battle for Earth's solar system lasted exactly 47 minutes. When it was over, the Zephyrian Empire had lost their first fleet engagement in over 2,000 years. Commander Krextal found himself aboard a human rescue ship, his once mighty flagship now a cloud of expanding debris. Around him, the survivors of his fleet, fewer than 30 ships out of the original 27, limped toward the edge of the system under human escort. The human medic treating his injuries was surprisingly gentle. Her name tag read, Dr. Martinez, and she worked with professional efficiency, despite the fact that an hour ago they had been trying to kill each other. "You'll live," she told him through the translation device. "Burns on your secondary arms, some internal bleeding, but nothing we can't fix. You're lucky your escape pod held together." Krextal looked at her with confusion. "Why are you helping?" "Me? We are enemies." Dr. Martinez paused in her work and looked at him with something that might have been pity. "Because that's what humans do. We help people who are hurt. even if they tried to hurt us first. Maybe especially then. Through the small porthole, Krextal could see human ships collecting survivors from other Zephyrian vessels, not capturing them, not interrogating them, rescuing them. It was unlike anything in his military experience. On the bridge of the human flagship Terra's Pride, Admiral Zhang reviewed the battle reports with grim satisfaction. The first test was over, and humanity had passed with better results than anyone had dared hope. Casualty report, he requested. 14 ships damaged, none destroyed, his aide reported. Total human casualties, 37 wounded, 2 dead. The aliens lost 22 ships destroyed, 5 heavily damaged. Zhang nodded. The numbers were exactly what the war games had predicted. The Zephyrians fought like most galactic empires, with overwhelming force and rigid tactics. They had never learned to adapt because they had never needed to. Humans had learned adaptation the hard way, through centuries of warfare against equally clever opponents. Every major conflict in human history had taught them something new about combat, strategy, and survival. Those lessons had been applied to interstellar warfare with devastating effectiveness. Signal Earth Command, Zhang ordered. Phase 1 complete. Beginning Phase 2 preparations. And send a message to our guest fleets. Tell them they can decloak. Now! As Admiral Zhang's message went out, the space around Earth began to fill with new contacts. These weren't human ships emerging from hiding. These were reinforcements arriving from outside the system entirely. Ships began dropping out of hyperspace in formations that made the Zephyrian fleet look small. Sleek vessels with hulls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Massive carriers that launched wings of fighters like angry wasps. Dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything the Empire had ever built. Commander Krextal watched from his medical bed and felt his remaining hope drain away. Impossible, he whispered. How many ships do you have? Dr. Martinez followed his gaze to the porthole. Oh, those aren't all ours. We have friends. The truth was even more shocking than the lie Krextal had believed. Humanity hadn't been alone. In space for over a century, they had encountered other species, other civilizations that had also suffered under imperial expansion. But unlike previous encounters, humanity had offered partnership instead of conquest. The Altarian Republic had been fighting a losing war against Zephyrian expansion for 50 years. The Kepler Commonwealth had lost 3 worlds to imperial integration in the past decade. The Free Traders Alliance had seen their shipping routes strangled by imperial taxes and restrictions. All of them had found refuge and partnership in human space. All of them had been waiting for this moment. Captain Virak of the Altarian ship Starfire opened a communication channel to Admiral Zhang. Her species looked almost human, except for the blue-tinted skin and the third eye in the center of her forehead. Admiral Zhang, she said in accented but clear English. The Altarian Republic stands ready to honor our alliance. Our fleet awaits your orders. Similar messages came from the other alien commanders, species that the Empire had driven to the edge of extinction, now armed with human weapons and tactics ready to take their revenge. Admiral Zhang had spent years preparing for this moment. The Grand Alliance, as they called it privately, was humanity's answer to imperial expansion. Instead of conquering other species, humans had offered them something the Empire never had: genuine partnership. All Allied commanders, Zhang transmitted. Welcome to the party. As planned, human forces will handle system defense. Allied fleets will prepare for Phase 3 operations. Remember, our goal isn't conquest, it's liberation. 3 days later, the news reached Emperor Vorthak in his palace on the imperial capital world of Zephyria Prime. The aged ruler had been expecting routine reports of another successful integration. Instead, he found himself staring at tactical reports that made no sense. You're telling me, he said slowly to his military advisors, that a single primitive world destroyed an entire imperial battle group? General Thekron, the Empire's highest military commander, shifted uncomfortably. Not just destroyed, Your Imperial Majesty, annihilated. And the survivors report that the humans have allies, multiple species, all armed with advanced technology. Emperor, Vorthak's 6 eyes narrowed to angry slits. Impossible. Our intelligence networks would have detected any significant alliance. With respect, Majesty, our intelligence has been focused on known threats. These humans appear to have been planning this for decades, perhaps centuries. They've been hiding their true capabilities while secretly building alliances with our enemies. The Emperor stood and began pacing, his massive frame casting shadows across the marble floor. The Zephyrians were an old species, one of the first to achieve interstellar travel. Their empire had been built over millennia, through careful expansion and overwhelming force. The idea that primitives could threaten that empire was unthinkable. What do we know about their actual capabilities? Vorthak demanded. General Thekron consulted his datapad. They appear to favor kinetic weapons and missile systems over energy weapons. Their ships are smaller but faster than ours. Most concerning, they show tactical coordination beyond anything we've encountered. Their entire military appears to operate as a single unified force. And their allies? Unknown numbers, unknown capabilities. The survivors report at least 6 different species, all using technology similar to human designs. If they've been sharing military technology, the Emperor cut him off with a gesture. Enough speculation. How do we crush this rebellion before it spreads? The Grand Armada, Majesty. Full deployment. 100,000 ships, the combined might of 50 imperial sectors. Nothing in the galaxy can stand against such force. Emperor Vorthak considered this. The Grand Armada was the Empire's ultimate weapon, never deployed except in the most serious crises. It represented the military might of thousands of worlds built up over centuries of conquest and expansion. Very well. Deploy the Grand Armada. Destroy the human world and all their allies. Make an example that will be remembered for 1,000 years. But even as he gave the order, the Emperor felt a chill of uncertainty. The humans had already proven they were full of surprises. What if they had more tricks waiting? On Earth, President, Chen received the intelligence reports with the calm expression that had carried her through decades of political crisis. The spy networks that humanity had built throughout imperial space were paying dividends now. They knew about the Grand Armada almost as soon as the orders were given. 100,000 ships, she said to the assembled Joint Chiefs. That's significantly more than our worst-case estimates. General Rodriguez nodded grimly. But still within acceptable parameters. Phase 3 preparations are complete. All Allied fleets are in position. The fortress worlds are ready. And the solar cannon? Charging as we speak. 6 months to full power, as designed. President Chen turned to look out the window of her office where she could see the lights of the city below. Billions of people going about their daily lives, most of them unaware that the fate of human civilization hung in the balance. Send the message to all colonies and allied worlds, she ordered. Operation Breakout is now active. It's time to show the galaxy what freedom looks like. Across human space, the message triggered the largest coordinated military operation in galactic history. Hidden fleets emerged from asteroid belts and gas giant clouds. Sleeper agents activated sabotage devices in Imperial installations. Allied species began simultaneous rebellions on dozens of worlds. The war was no longer just about Earth. It was about the future of freedom in the galaxy. On the bridge of his medical transport, Commander Krextal watched human ships escorting his survivors toward the edge of the system. The humans had kept their word. His people would be allowed to leave unharmed, carrying news of the battle back to the Empire. But Krextal was beginning to understand that this had been the humans' plan all along. They wanted the Empire to know what had happened here. They wanted every species in the galaxy to hear about the day that Imperial expansion had been stopped cold. Commander, one of his surviving officers approached. Should we warn the Empire about what we've seen? The numbers, the technology, the allies. Krextal thought about it for a long moment. His duty was to serve the Empire, to provide intelligence that would help them win the coming war. But he had also seen something in the human doctors and medics that he had never encountered before. Genuine compassion for their enemies. Yes, he finally said. We'll tell them everything. Let the Empire decide what to do with the truth. As his transport ship crossed into hyperspace, Krextal took one last look at the human solar system. It looked peaceful from this distance, just another yellow star with a collection of small planets. But now he knew the truth. Humanity was not primitive. They were not weak. And they were definitely not alone. The Empire was about to learn the hardest lesson in its long history. Never underestimate a species that has learned to survive by fighting itself. Emperor Vorthak stood before the largest holographic display ever constructed, watching red dots spread across the galaxy like a plague. Each dot represented a rebellion, an uprising, or an attack on Imperial forces. In the 6 months since the humans had destroyed his first fleet, the Empire was burning from within. "Status report," he demanded, his voice echoing through the vast command chamber. General Thekron approached with obvious reluctance. The aging military commander had lost weight in recent months, the stress of coordinating responses to dozens of simultaneous crises taking its toll. "Majesty, the situation continues to deteriorate. The Altarian Republic has reclaimed 4 of their lost worlds. The Kepler Commonwealth has declared full independence and is actively recruiting other species to join their rebellion. Trade routes throughout the Outer Rim are under constant attack by forces using human-designed weapons." "And the Grand Armada?" "Fully assembled at Rally Point Sigma as ordered. 100,000 ships, the largest fleet in galactic history. Admiral Korthek is ready to depart on your command." Emperor Vorthak studied the display more carefully. The red dots seemed to be organized around certain systems like flowers growing from seeds, and at the center of it all, the tiny yellow star that had started this nightmare. "Show me Sol system," he ordered. The display zoomed in on human space, and Vorthak felt his blood chill. What had been 27 contacts 6 months ago was now a defensive network that defied belief. Hundreds of ships patrolled the outer system. The asteroid belt sparkled with weapons platforms. Every planet and moon bristled with installations that radiated dangerous amounts of energy. "How is this possible?" Vorthak whispered. "They've built more in 6 months than most species manage in centuries. Intelligence suggests they've been preparing for this conflict for much longer than we originally believed," Thekron replied. "Our analysts now think the humans have been planning for Galactic War since they first achieved faster-than-light travel, for over a century?" "Yes, Majesty. They appear to have studied every species they encountered, learning our strengths and weaknesses. Their entire civilization has been organized around the assumption that someday they would face a superior galactic power." Vorthak felt a chill that had nothing to do with the climate-controlled throne room. A species that planned for war across centuries. Who thought that far ahead except the Zephyrians themselves? And this solar cannon they used against Commander Krextal's fleet? "According to our surviving prisoners, it was just a warning shot. Intelligence suggests the weapon is still charging, drawing power from their sun itself. Full power estimates are concerning." "How concerning?" Thekron hesitated. "Our scientists believe that at full power it could destroy a moon, possibly a small planet." The Emperor was quiet for a long moment, studying the tactical display. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a fortress specifically designed to fight the Zephyrian Empire. Every weapon, every defense, every strategic position had been chosen to counter Imperial advantages. It was brilliant. It was terrifying. And it was about to be tested against the full might of the Empire. "Send the Grand Armada," Vorthak ordered finally. "Admiral Korthek has authorization to use any means necessary to destroy the human threat. I want their world burned to ash and their allies scattered to the void." 3 weeks later, the largest military fleet in galactic history dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Sol system. Admiral Korthek stood on the bridge of the massive super-dreadnought galactic throne, watching his tactical displays fill with enemy contacts. But unlike Commander Krextal, Korthek was prepared for what he found. He had studied every report from the first battle, analyzed every piece of intelligence the Empire had gathered about human capabilities. He knew the humans were dangerous, he just didn't know how dangerous. "Fleet Formation 7, he ordered calmly. "Advance in 3 waves. First wave to probe their defenses, second wave to engage their fleet, third wave to assault the planet itself. Sir, his tactical officer reported, I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout the system. The humans have been busy. Korthek nodded. The humans had indeed been busy. Where 6 months ago there had been hidden weapons, now there were obvious ones. Massive battle stations orbited every planet. The asteroid belt had been turned into a defensive network that stretched millions of kilometers. And everywhere, human ships waited in perfect formation. Begin the assault, Korthek ordered. The first wave of Imperial ships, 30,000 strong, advanced into the outer system. They met the human defenders near Neptune's orbit, and the battle that followed would be remembered as the largest space engagement in galactic history. But Admiral Zhang, watching from his command ship deep in the asteroid belt, wasn't worried about this battle. He was thinking about the next one. Phase 4 is go, he transmitted to his fleet commanders. All units, implement Gambit 7. What happened next caught the Imperial fleet completely off guard. The human defenders didn't stand and fight as expected. Instead, they fought a running retreat, drawing the Imperial ships deeper into the system while taking minimal losses. Admiral Korthek watched the tactical display with growing confusion. They're retreating? After all their preparation? They're running? Sir, they're not running randomly, his tactical officer observed. They're leading us along specific routes, avoiding certain areas entirely. Minefields? Possibly, sir. Or they could be protecting something. Korthek studied the human movements more carefully. There was definitely a pattern here, but he couldn't see what it was. The humans were giving ground, but doing it in a way that seemed almost calculated. Then the real battle began. As the Imperial fleet reached the asteroid belt, space around them exploded into violence. What had looked like random chunks of rock revealed themselves as heavily armed battle stations. The humans hadn't just hidden weapons in the asteroids, they had turned the entire belt into a massive weapons system. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to incredible speeds, hammered Imperial shields. Missile swarms launched from hidden launchers overwhelmed point defenses. And throughout it all, the human fleet continued its coordinated retreat, drawing more Imperial ships into the killing zone. It's a trap, Korthek realized. The entire system is one massive trap. But he was an experienced admiral and he had dealt with traps before. All ships, emergency reverse. Get us out of this asteroid field. Sir, we can't. Look at the display. Korthek looked and felt his heart skip a beat. Behind his fleet, new contacts were appearing. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation, cutting off his retreat. Not human ships, these were the allies that intelligence had warned about. The Altarian Republic's entire battle fleet had arrived, along with ships from a dozen other species, all of them armed with weapons that looked suspiciously like human designs, all of them moving with the same impossible coordination that had destroyed the first Imperial expedition. We're surrounded, his tactical officer reported unnecessarily. Admiral, Zhang's voice cut across all frequencies, calm and professional as always. Admiral Korthek, this is Admiral Zhang of the Terran Defense Force. You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender now, and your crews will be treated according to the laws. Of war? Korthek almost laughed. Surrender? The Imperial Navy did not surrender, especially not to primitives and rebels. Never, he transmitted back. The Empire does not bow to inferiors. Very well, Zhang replied. All units, weapons free. Operation Thunderbolt is now active. What followed was the most one-sided battle in Imperial history. The Human Alliance had spent months studying Imperial tactics, learning every weakness and vulnerability. They knew exactly how Imperial ships moved, how their commanders thought, how their technology worked. The Zephyrians had never faced an enemy that understood them so completely. Admiral Korthek watched his magnificent fleet torn apart by weapons that shouldn't exist and tactics that made no sense. The humans fought like they could read his mind, anticipating every order before he gave it. Their allies struck with precision that spoke of years of coordination and training. But the worst part was the communications. Throughout the battle, the humans were broadcasting on every frequency, sending messages not just to the Imperial fleet, but to every ship and station within light years of Sol. "This is President Chen of the United Earth Federation," came the voice that was becoming familiar across the galaxy. "Citizens of the Zephyrian Empire, you are witnessing the destruction of your Grand Armada. Your leaders told you that resistance was impossible, that Imperial power could not be challenged. Today, that lie dies with their fleet." Korthek tried to jam the transmissions, but the humans had somehow hacked into the Imperial communication network itself. Every ship in his fleet was receiving the human broadcast whether he wanted it or not. "The Empire has ruled through fear for too long," President Chen continued. "Fear of their superior numbers, their advanced technology, their inevitable victory. But fear only works when people believe they have no choice. Today we offer every species in the galaxy a different choice." On his tactical display, Korthek watched the red icons representing his ships wink out one by one. 90,000 ships, the pride of 50 Imperial worlds, being systematically destroyed by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive. Freedom. Chen's voice echoed across the dying fleet. The choice to live your own lives, to govern your own worlds, to determine your own destiny. This is what we offer. This is what we fight for. And this is what we will die for, if necessary. But as the battle raged around Earth's sun, it became clear that dying wouldn't be necessary. The humans and their allies weren't just winning. They were winning so decisively that Imperial morale began to collapse. Ships began surrendering rather than face destruction. Entire squadrons laid down their weapons and requested safe passage. Some even switched sides in the middle of battle, turning their guns on their former comrades. Admiral Korthek found himself alone on the bridge of his flagship, his crew having evacuated to escape pods. Around him, the galactic throne shuddered under repeated impacts from human weapons. "Admiral," came Admiral Zhang's voice over the communication system, "your ship is dead in space. Your fleet is destroyed. Evacuate now and you'll live to see tomorrow." Korthek looked around at his devastated bridge, then at the tactical display showing the wreckage of Imperial power. In 6 hours, the greatest fleet in galactic history had been reduced to drifting debris and scattered survivors. "How?" he transmitted back. "How did primitives accomplish this?" There was a pause before Zhang answered, and when he did, his voice carried a weight that spoke of centuries of human experience. "We're not primitives, Admiral. We're survivors. We've been fighting wars since before your species learned to fly. We've conquered our own world a dozen times over, learned from every victory and every defeat. You thought you were facing another primitive species ready for integration. Instead, you found a civilization that has spent its entire existence preparing for war." Korthek's escape pod ejected from his dying ship just as the solar cannon fired its first shot at full power. The beam of energy, brighter than a supernova, punched through the center of his fleet and continued on into deep space. Any ship caught in its path simply ceased to exist. As he drifted toward the human rescue ships that were already moving to collect survivors, Admiral Korthek understood that the galaxy had changed forever. The Empire's age of expansion was over. The age of human freedom had begun. The Battle of Sol lasted 18 hours and changed the course of galactic history. When the solar cannon's final shot vaporized the Imperial super dreadnought Galactic Throne, taking Admiral Korthek's flagship and the last organized resistance with it, the silence that followed was deafening. President Chen stood in the observation deck of Luna Station, watching human and allied ships collect survivors from the wreckage of the largest fleet ever assembled. The debris field stretched across millions of kilometers, the scattered remains of Imperial dreams of conquest. "Casualty report," she requested quietly. Admiral Zhang's voice came through the communicator with the calm tone that had carried them through the crisis. "Human losses, 43 ships destroyed, 112 damaged. Allied losses, 97 ships destroyed, 206 damaged. Total casualties, approximately 12,000 dead, 30,000 wounded." Chen closed her eyes for a moment. 12,000 human lives lost in a single day. Each one had been someone's child, parent, spouse, friend. The price of freedom was always paid in blood. "Imperial losses?" she asked. Preliminary estimates suggest 87,000 ships destroyed or captured, approximately 2 million casualties, less than 5,000 survivors in our custody. The numbers were staggering. In one battle, humanity and its allies had effectively destroyed the military might of an empire that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. But Chen felt no satisfaction in the victory, only a grim determination to ensure such slaughter would never be necessary again. Admiral, begin Phase 5 operations. All Allied fleets are to proceed to their assigned liberation targets. It's time to free the galaxy. Across the Sol system, ships began departing for dozens of star systems where Imperial forces still held power. The victory at Sol had been just the beginning. Now came the harder task of dismantling an empire and building something better in its place. On Zephyria Prime, Emperor Vorthak stared at the reports with disbelief that had slowly turned to horrified acceptance. The Grand Armada was gone, not defeated, annihilated. The greatest military force in galactic history had been destroyed by a species the Empire had dismissed as primitive barely a year ago. Majesty, General Thekron said quietly, we're receiving reports from across the Empire. Rebellions on 47 worlds. Our local fleets are being overwhelmed by coordinated attacks. The humans and their allies are moving faster than we can respond. Vorthak turned away from the displays showing the collapse of his empire. How long do we have? Unknown, Majesty. But the human fleets are approaching our core worlds. Our remaining forces are scattered, demoralized. Many are simply surrendering rather than fight. And our options? Thekron hesitated. Limited, Majesty. We could attempt to negotiate. Negotiate? Vorthak's voice carried dangerous anger. The Zephyrian Empire does not negotiate with inferiors. With respect, Majesty, these are no longer inferiors. They've proven themselves our equals in battle. Perhaps it's time to consider that our way of ruling the galaxy wasn't the only way. Vorthak looked at his oldest advisor with something like betrayal in his eyes. But deep down, he knew. Thekron was right. The Empire's time was ending whether he accepted it or not. 3 months later, President Chen stood before the largest gathering of species representatives in galactic history. The Great Assembly Hall on the neutral world of Haven Station had been hastily constructed to accommodate delegates from over 300 different civilizations. Some were former Imperial subjects finally free to speak for themselves. Others were independent species that had hidden in the galaxy's unexplored regions, avoiding Imperial attention. And a few were even reformed Zephyrians, members of the former ruling species who had chosen to embrace the new order rather than fight it. Citizens of the galaxy, Chen began, her words translated into hundreds of languages simultaneously. We gather today not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals united in the cause of freedom. The speech that followed would be remembered as one of the most important in galactic history. Chen spoke not of human superiority or the triumph of Earth, but of the principles that would guide the new galactic order: self-determination, mutual cooperation, and the rejection of empire in all its forms. No species has the right to rule over another, she declared. No government has the authority to claim sovereignty over worlds not freely given to its care, and no military force has the power to impose its will on those who choose freedom over subjugation. The applause that followed came from delegates representing billions of beings across thousands of worlds. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy was free to choose its own destiny. But the most important moment came when former Emperor Vorthak, now simply Citizen Vorthak, stepped forward to address the assembly. The aging Zephyrian looked tired, diminished, but his voice carried dignity as he spoke. For 10,000 years my people ruled this galaxy through force and fear, he said. We told ourselves it was for the greater good, that our guidance was necessary for galactic peace and prosperity. Today I stand before you to admit the truth. We were wrong. The hall fell silent as the former master of the galaxy continued. The humans have shown us a better way. Not through conquest, but through cooperation. Not through domination, but through partnership. I formally renounce all imperial claims to sovereignty over any world or species. The Zephyrian Empire is ended. In its place, we offer our membership in whatever government this assembly chooses to create. The Galactic Free Federation, as it came to be known, was founded that day with the support of every delegation present. It was a loose confederation based on mutual aid and voluntary cooperation, with Earth serving as the military guarantor of freedom for any species that requested protection. But humanity's role was carefully limited. The lessons of their own history had taught them that even the most benevolent protector could become a tyrant if given too much power, so the Federation was designed with strict limits on any single species' authority, with rotating leadership and mandatory term limits for all positions. Admiral Zhang, now promoted to Supreme Commander of Federation Defense Forces, established the military doctrine that would guide the new era, strength sufficient to deter aggression but never enough to enable conquest. Every Federation fleet included ships from multiple species, ensuring that no single world could dominate the others. The transformation wasn't easy or immediate. There were holdout imperial loyalists who tried to restart the old empire. There were disputes between newly freed species over territory and resources. There were attempts by various groups to create their own mini-empires. But each challenge was met with the combined response of the Federation, and gradually, the galaxy learned to live in peace. Trade flourished between worlds that had been isolated for centuries. Scientific cooperation led to breakthroughs that benefited everyone. Art and culture spread across species barriers as communication improved. 5 years after the Battle of Sol, President Chen, now serving as the Federation's first elected president, stood once again on Luna Station. But instead of watching the aftermath of battle, she was observing the launch of the largest peaceful expedition in galactic history. The exploration initiative would send mixed species crews to the galaxy's unexplored regions, seeking new worlds and new civilizations to invite into the Federation. But unlike the old Imperial expansion, this was exploration for knowledge and friendship, not conquest. "Any regrets?" Admiral Zhang asked, joining her at the observation window. Chen considered the question as she watched the expedition fleet disappear into hyperspace. "About the war? About the lives lost? Always. But about the choice we made? No, the galaxy is better free than enslaved, whatever the cost." "The Zephyrians are adapting well to the new order," Zhang observed. "Their technical expertise has been invaluable in rebuilding the damaged worlds." "Former enemies often make the best allies," Chen replied. "They understand the cost of conflict better than most." The two humans stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars that no longer belonged to any empire. Earth remained humanity's home, but human ships now traveled freely throughout the galaxy, carrying the message of freedom to any who would listen. The age of empire was over. The age of cooperation had begun, and at the center of it all, a small blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star had proven that the desire for freedom was the most powerful force in the galaxy. But perhaps the most important change was in humanity itself. The species that had spent centuries fighting itself had finally found a worthy cause to unite around, ensuring that no other species would ever face the choice between slavery and extinction. They had become the galaxy's guardians not through conquest but through sacrifice, and in the end that made all the difference. On a small planet on the galaxy's rim, a young Altarian child asked her grandmother about the old days before the Federation. The elderly woman smiled and told her the story that had become legend across 1,000 worlds. Once upon a time, there was a little blue planet whose people refused to kneel. When the mightiest empire in the galaxy came to conquer them, they stood up and said no. And because they were brave enough to fight for their freedom, all of us are free today. The child listened with wide eyes, then asked the question that every generation would ask. "Will they always protect us, grandmother?" The old woman looked up at the stars where human ships kept their eternal watch and smiled. "As long as there are those who would take freedom away, there will be those who fight to preserve it. That's what it means to be human." And across the galaxy, on worlds that had never heard of Earth until the day humanity declared its independence, that story would be told again and again. the story of a species that chose freedom over safety, sacrifice over surrender, and proved that the greatest empires could fall when faced with the simplest truth. All beings have the right to be free.